podcast, part of the Field of 68 Network. And we are happy to be joined today by Homer Drew, the father of Scott Drew, also the longtime Valparaiso coach. And I tell you, I'm a little jealous. I think actually is too. Homer joining us from Phoenix, Arizona, his home, which, Phoenix is one of my top 5 all-time cities. I love going there. Homer, tell us what it's like in Phoenix right now while so much of the rest of the country is cold and freezing.
Well, as I look back, I grew up in the Midwest. So as I'm looking back and talking with friends, Jason, and it's bitter cold because Valparaiso is about an hour drive south of Chicago, and they're having already ice and snow, and I have no shoveling of the snow down here. And this morning was like 45, and this afternoon about 67. So we have really enjoyed the weather here in Phoenix.
That's awesome. And I'm sure you're taking a lot of time to watch college basketball. It's been a weird season. Before we get into Baylor and getting some good stories from you about Scott, how would you kind of put what's going on right now into words? How odd is this whole dynamic?
Very odd, very crazy, very weird. I'm just thrilled that at least we're getting some basketball games in, whereas in the last spring, as you remember, Jason, Ashley, we didn't have anything. It was just shut down completely, and especially, for March Madness, which was a disappointment to the players and to the coaches, but even to the fans like all of us. So I'm thrilled at least we've got some activity, whether they're not full arenas, but at least the players are having a chance to play. And after, as you and I know, the hard work that the players put in, it's nice for them to be able to showcase what they have been practicing on and how much they have improved.
Yeah, and I think one thing that gets lost on just the common fan is, how difficult of a situation this is for a coach. When it comes to preparing for a game and all of a sudden one of your players goes out or whatever it may be. When you talk to Scott, what are some of the biggest challenges and curveballs that he's having to deal with through all this?
Every day is a new adventure, he says. From scheduling, you don't know if you're going to play this week or tomorrow night, and then all of a sudden, the last minute, you find out that someone has been exposed with the COVID-19. So it changes instantly, as far as a coach. And as a coach, we always like to have things pretty well organized and set so you get the players in a routine so that they feel comfortable in that routine. No routine in today's world, but it's been fun, I think, to adapt. And I think it's been good because players and coaches, at least from my point of view, seem to be able to spend more time together because when you're all in the same floor in the same hotel, you, as a coach, you create situations where you kind of communicate, whether it's by Zoom. I think most coaches, including me, now finally understand Zoom and can at least get on. Sometimes we need IT people to help us, but it has expanded the communication, like with Zoom and in other ways to communicate with players.
Absolutely.
Homer, I would love to hear how Scott was as a child growing up in your household. So one of the questions I want to ask you is, can you remember the last time you had to ground him, and why did you have to ground him?
Wow, that would have to go back a few years. He's always been energetic. He was the oldest of 3 children, and so he was always very creative and very liking to do adventuresome things. He always was positive growing up, and actually it's wonderful to see him coach that way, where everything is half full and not half empty. He will find the good in a bad situation, and I really admire that he can accomplish that. He was also a really good communicator. In fact, when he was in college, he was online to go in to becoming a lawyer. So we thought that's where he was going to end up. And I can still remember, Ashley, when he came home over a vacation time his senior year, and he says, "Dad, I need to talk with you." And I said, "Well, fine, sure, Scott, let's sit down and talk." And he says, "I think I'm more interested in going into coaching than law school." And I said, "Well, let's examine that. Why don't we go to law school and then, once you've got that, then explore coaching?" And he said, No, Dad, I'd really like to kind of explore coaching. So we had an opening for a grad assistant. So we hired him as a grad assistant, and he was sensational. He's a wonderful recruiter, Ashley, because he communicates well with people, from grandparents down to the players, down to the parents. I mean, he enjoys people and he enjoys learning. Like he'll say, well, what'd you see in the game? You know, to me, to his staff, to other people who know basketball. He's always eager to learn more.
Where did he get his persistent optimism from? Is that a trait that you handed down to him, or is that something that you saw he was unusually geared towards, you know, just looking at things, the bright side of life from an early age?
Wonderful thing about our God is that God gives everyone different talents and different abilities. And we have 3 children in there, all 3 different personalities. I was going to say different interests, but they all did kind of gravitate to basketball. Bryce, the younger brother, had a chance to play basketball for us, you know, at Valparaiso, and then played 6 years in the NBA, and now is in coaching. And Dana, the one that was in the middle, had to fend both brothers off, was probably the most feisty of the basketball players. She was all conference and played. They didn't have the WNBA, but so she went over to Europe and played over in Europe professionally afterwards. So all 3 did gravitate to basketball, although that was definitely not mom and dad's plan for them. But because of being around the gym so much and that, they kind of gravitated to that over the years, I think.
Yeah.
Even though Scott, you know, might not have been the player or the athlete that Bryce was, was he still a guy that loved to play, whether it was basketball or other sports? What did he like to do when he was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old? What can you envision him doing?
Well, Scott was a natural athlete too. He played all the sports, from basketball to tennis to football. He was very much in baseball. He was a pitcher and shortstop in baseball. So he was a natural athlete, but I think he became a really good teacher because he helped both his sister and brother achieve their dreams on the basketball court. So he was a very good encourager. He loved the knowledge of the game. In fact, at a young age, he would help run our basketball camps, and was a great teacher even then. But he loved the sports world and he loved to teach it.
I was going to ask too, I mean, when you talk about, you know, always eager to learn, I mean, can you remember nights at the dinner table when you're going over plays, maybe you're scouting an opponent and he's in there watching those kind of tapes with you when he's in his teens? What were those times like?
It was wonderful times because would take him recruiting with us, and he would, when he was young, like 5 and 6, he would do the statistic sheet for me. We'd say, how many times did Jason shoot? How many rebounds did Jason get? And so he would keep track of that. Then as he got older, then it was like, Dad, how did that guy get so open? How did this guy get so many rebounds? You know, how do you get the ball to the center spot? So then they became more technical questions as his interest and as he got older. So he always was very inquisitive. He always wanted to know how this is happening and why it's happening.
So these were conversations you'd have in the bleachers at high school gyms when you're recruiting. Is that what you?
And driving back and forth in the car, going to the game or coming home. That's when he would ask questions about the game. Why do you think the coach ran this play? Why didn't the coach press sooner? You know, so he was very inquisitive, but very factual. I mean, he studied the game even then.
How interested was he in your team, and whether it's coming to your practices or getting to know your players? Was he the ball boy? Any stories there?
Oh, he was the ball boy, and loved being around the players. And the nice thing was the players accepted him, and that just boosted his confidence to do more for them. Like, I mean, they would come in between classes and that, and he'd rebound the ball for them and pass the ball to them. And so he got to know the players as people, as individuals. And I think one of the things I'm really most proud with him at Baylor University or wherever he's coached, it's about the players, and he wants them to graduate or have a chance to go on and play pro ball if they need to leave early. But he was always wanting them to, he always pushed them or tried to motivate them to do better than what they are today.
Right. Last childhood question for you. But, Scott is, people that are close to the program know he is good at ping pong. I mean, he is good at ping pong. Now, was there anything a sport he was really good at? Like you mentioned tennis, or were there a lot of battles between him and his brothers in the backyard on the basketball goal?
There were battles in the backyard. There were 1-on-1 and even 2-on-2 with my wife Janet happened to be the official to make sure that there weren't any pushing and shoving going on.
Right.
So she would act as the mediator for that. But we, as a family, and maybe I grew up with ping pong, so I like the hand-eye coordination. So all of our kids learned to play ping pong at a very, very early age. In fact, I remember when Bryce and Scott went off when they were really young to church camp, and they had a ping pong tournament. And the championship game ended up between Bryce and Scott. and Bryce was kind of on a roll and had the lead. So Scott uses his great motivation. He says, well, Mom and Dad wanted me to let you win anyway.
That's great.
And so Scott was always a motivator and always looking out on what can give him that extra edge.
Yeah.
Homer, when Scott first took the Baylor job, obviously that was probably a tough decision on the outside looking in because of the scandal. What were those conversations like? When he called you to discuss that, he was an assistant at Val. Well, he was the head coach at Valpo, right? You had just stepped down, right? So he had 1 year as the head coach. But what was that conversation like about the Baylor job?
One of questioning and one of excitement. Excitement because what a great time to go into the program, because it's as down, as low as it can get. The situation that he was going, at least in my lifetime, I've never seen such a difficult situation. So the great thing actually is there's only one way to go, and that's upward. And so that's what was really attractive to Scott about that. The big thing was all the question marks. Would they give him an opportunity to stay and work through all of the probations, all of the penalties that the NCAA was going to put on the men's basketball program at Baylor. So that was the heavy work. And what was wonderful, the school was really good, the administration, that he signed a contract, but they also added for every year that the school was on probation, he got another year. So he ended up with almost a 10-year contract, which gave him the chance to really rebuild the program. Because the first few years, he had half a season to play. He had half the number of scholarships. He was really handcuffed into what he could do. But because of the contract, it allowed him to stay there, to be able to finally get the probations over and the penalties over, and then build his own program, which the rest is history.
I'm curious. He's had a shift. Like early on, he relied pretty heavily on freshmen. Obviously he needed to. The Curtis Geralds, Kevin Rogers, Henry Dugats of the world. But then he made a shift where he's, this get old, stay old philosophy has really been a staple of the program. They've done very well with transfers. Were there conversations about that along the way? Was there some frustration with the inconsistency that freshmen often bring? I just would love to hear some insight into his shift and how he's transformed the program to one that's very consistent today.
Well, great knowledge of the history with what he started with, and he recruited the freshmen. And as you and I know, that fourth and fifth year, you're much better than that first year or second year, unless you get the one and done type of players. And so he really adapted well, he and his staff. And I think Ashley, Scott would be one of the first to acknowledge the staff that he has been really good to work with. Tang has been with him for the 18 years, and that's incredible for two of them to work together closely and be able to adjust as time went on. And then with Alvin Brooks and John Dankus, the four of them really work well together. And I think and Scott's marvelous at evaluating a loss. Why did we lose? Evaluating on a win. What did we do well? What do we have to get better at? And recruiting is one of those topics. And so you go through, and all of a sudden, when the transfer rules started to change, that became a door opener for him to be able to recruit some of these. And again, the experience you get a senior or a fifth-year senior, and now they can go and compete against, if not be better than some of these one-and-done players who are there 1 year and then end up in the NBA. Right. But that the physical growth of a person, the mental growth of the person, so all of these activities help those fourth and fifth year players. And so to answer your question, he was really good to evaluate and to adjust in the recruiting world.
How old was Scott when he took that job? Low 30s, right? I should know that.
32.
Yeah. I think sometimes people forget, we love to watch players get better over their 4 years, but I really enjoyed watching Scott get better as a coach, and just whether it's the way he recruits or handles himself in the media or the X's and O's of the game. I remember his first 3 or 4 years there, and this is kind of when they were starting to get competitive again. He took a lot of criticism. Baylor's a talented team, but the coaching is not great. And then it was like the recruiting. There was something with a brochure and Bobby Knight on it. Everyone was just kind of coming after him. But I know he was under a lot of pressure taking over that situation, and also he was young. What do you remember about that whole time period as he was kind of finding his way?
A very difficult time period, because anytime you're questioned, Jason, anytime I'm questioned, we take it personally. It hurts us. And so he worked through that very well, and used that knowledge to make himself better. He didn't get frustrated with it. He just kept working at what he was doing. And in that early times, after you had the freshman, then he, to me, I've always known he's a special coach. But what he has done, where he took those freshmen that Ashley mentioned, and then you throw in the big. Remember when he went through the 1-1-3 zone? Mm-hmm. And he did that because that's what was most effective for that group of players, because of the length that they had in that front line, much like a Syracuse zone, that you can go sideline to sideline with the length of the arm span in that. And so you were able to play the three bigs. So he went through that, and then he was able to attract some quick guards. And now, in my opinion, they're, if not the best, one of the top defensive team in the country, with the quickness and the tenacity that they play defense. So I think it's been a real compliment to Scott and his staff that they've been able to adjust to the different talent that comes in.
Right. You talk about his positivity. Did that hurt him when he was kind of getting criticized earlier? Did he just keep that upbeat smile and move right through it? Or,
well, as we all do, you reflect and you get better from it, or you give up. And Scott's he's got that persistency, that determination that he was not going to, and he just kept pushing on and keeping on, and that's why he's been there 18 years and one of the top coaches.
He absolutely is. When coaches get better, especially when you're talking about X's and O's, can you just remember? I'm trying to figure out a way to illustrate how he did that. Whether it's going to clinics, whether it's talking to you or other mentors, in the coaching profession. Like, what steps did he take to really just continue to improve? And I'm sure he's continues to take those steps today.
Yes, and let me finish up on answering, because my wife walked in and she went like this. And Jason, this is the key through that difficult time. Scott prayed a lot. And I can remember he and I reading through the book of Job during this time as well. So he returned to his foundation of faith. And I think that was a big ingredient for him to overcome the challenges and the difficulties through this time. And I admire him for that as well. Now, let me come back to your question now. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just, who did he lean on during those times? I mean, when he's trying to schematically get better, X's and O's wise? I mean, does he have guys in the profession, that were mentors to him? That I'm just trying to illustrate, how he became this elite coach that he is now.
He likes to read, so he reads a lot of the books that the coaches put out. He's also very good at calling people and asking, what do you think of his own? What do you think of man for man? And probably what he excels with, I don't know, remember King McClure, who graduated a couple of years ago and now has gotten into some of the broadcasting of games and that. And King made a great point. He says he looks at more tape than any person I know. Yeah. And Scott does that. He'll take a game and he'll rerun, he'll see the footwork, he'll see the positioning and why the positioning. So he really puts time into learning the profession.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you watch this current Baylor team, Homer, obviously it's a team that expects to compete for a Big 12 championship and a national championship. Where do you think they need to get better from what you've seen? What weaknesses do they have? And, do you think that they have what it takes to cut down the nets sometime in April?
Without question, they have that opportunity, that possibility to make it to the Final Four and win it all. A lot has to go into that. One is it's very balanced this year. I mean, you got Gonzaga and Baylor at the top, but there's a lot of teams now that we're seeing that are getting better and better as time goes on. So it's a very balanced. It's not I guess you could say Gonzaga and Baylor have dominated so far, but there's 2 months to go in conference season. And every conference game, no matter what conference you're in, is very more difficult because coaches know you better. They know your style and the play. So it becomes a lot harder for all teams as you get into this conference season. The other thing besides the balance of college basketball, I think, is that you got to stay healthy.
Yeah.
And so that is so key. If you lose some key players along the way, that changes your season quickly. And with COVID-19, you don't know if you're going to play tomorrow or a week from now. So you've got a lot of variables. But yes, they do have all the ingredients. If they can stay healthy and continue to get better, they definitely have a great future to look forward to. Weaknesses, boy, I think one of the big things is just consistency and scoring. And this is true with almost every team. Boy, you got to make baskets sometimes. Their defense is so good, it keeps them in the game, and it's good enough where they can create some easy baskets in transition that are crucial when you are struggling shooting the basketball. And like last game, they only had four, I think, three made 3-pointers. And that's not typical because they're shooting over 43% for the year, which is incredible. Right. Yeah. But you never know when that game as a coach pops up and you just can't get the ball in. So consistency in shooting as well. And then also, to be able to keep the defense as strong as it is and rebounding as strong as it is. And the thing that I think that really makes them really special is that they're very unselfish. They are, quote, a team. A couple plays last game, Ashley, they had 4 guys touch the ball and then the 5th person scores a basket. I mean, they really share the basketball and they look for their teammates to get in the better shot. And that's a real wonderful trait that's going to take them a long way.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize sometimes how hard it is to recruit a team like that. I mean, to not make any mistakes and to have a whole locker room that is unified and on the same page like that. I mean, why do you think that's happened? I mean, is he just so careful about who he's bringing into the program now?
Well, he's very careful. The 4 coaches do an outstanding job of trying to screening and bringing the players in and letting the players have input to, is so-and-so, is he going to make a good teammate? So they ask the players, what type of player that you will like playing for. And having coached for 40-some years, that locker room and the togetherness of the team is so vital. You can beat a more talented team when you have a team that's together and playing for one another.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a fair or not, but I mean, there's kind of this little cliche out there now that says, Scott Drew does better with kind of the guys with the chip on their shoulder. He had some McDonald's All-Americans and some one and done kind of guys, but man, he really seems to flourish when his players are, the transfers, the overlooked guys. Is there anything to that, do you think? Or
I don't think so. I think that's
No.
just the time that you're going through. And
Yeah.
he adapted very well to getting those type of transfer players, but you're still needing to put them into where, one, that they're playing in their strength, two, that they can get along with the people next to them on the floor. If you and I don't enjoy and you don't want to pass to me and I don't want to pass to you, that really affects the outcome. But if I enjoy knowing that you got that wide open three and that's your favorite shot, I want to make sure I get that ball to you. I think those things are huge for when you're playing at that high level.
Absolutely. And it's not like you just aren't going to take a McDonald's guy if he wants to come to your school either. You still got to recruit those kind of players. When you look back at his Baylor career, are there landmark moments or things that, you think he's particularly proud of, or times when you thought, wow, that was a big step?
Wow. When they finally got the
bid,
the probation period over with, and they got to play their first, full season, and that took a couple years, and then they got that first 20-win season. And once the first one came, of course, the rest is history, but then more came. And then they started out by getting to the tournament. Then they moved to the Sweet 16. Then they got to the Elite Eight several times. So he's been in a steady building process where they've gotten better and better over the time. And that has really been fun to see him. And for any coach in Division I, when you stay 18 years at a school, that's really a compliment that you've worked hard and you have been successful, because that's a rarity in today's world.
Yeah. So when you, during the season, how often do you all have conversations? I know he mentions fishing trips, perhaps off season with you and Bryce, but during the season, do you all have late night calls, or how do those conversations go?
One of the wonderful things, Ashley, from a father's point of view, it's about 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and then there's a three-way call between Scott, Bryce, and myself. And they just talk, and I think I learn more from them nowadays than what I share with them. But it's wonderful to talk about basketball, something that was my profession and now their profession. And so that's a special moment for Dad anyway. And the three of us just talk about personnel, talk about combinations, talk about, is there a better offense, a better defense, what to do in the closing seconds of a game, who do we want the ball in the hands of, and so it's very, very rewarding. Once they're winning and doing well, then we jump into fishing really quickly, though, and think about the next spot the three of us can go. Since they were probably 4 and 5 years old, we always had the three of us would go on a fishing trip for 3 or 4 days, and then my wife Janet took our daughter Dana, and they would have a woman's road trip those 3 days. So they would take off and visit relatives and friends. We would go fishing. And so we've been really blessed to have gone from Alaska to Florida to Mexico, and like to find different places to go fish. So then we talk about that.
I want to ask you too, Jared Nunes was a guy that played for you at Valpo, and now he's, a coach at Baylor. He's been at Baylor a long time, and one of the bright young coaching prospects that's out there. What's it like as just a source of pride for you to see former players go into coaching? I'm sure you take that as the ultimate compliment, because they saw something in you that modeled such a positive impact it can have on other people, that they decided to choose that as their profession.
Very proud of those who have, and proud of those who became doctors or lawyers or whatever as well. But we had, I want to think there's probably about 8 or 9 or 10 of the former managers who have now gone into coaching as well, from Valparaiso. And so that I feel when I get a phone call and they say, our team we ran the pacer play, coach, they'll call back and talk. So really feel honored that they choose to go into that profession, as well as other professions, though. But it is rewarding that they go in and then they get to call back and get their questions too about what they should be doing. It allows me to still stay in touch with them, which I enjoy very much.
Homer, a lot of times when a coach experiences success on such a high level like Scott has, especially with the rebuild he's done, as a Baylor fan or a fan of that school, you worry, they may leave. Everyone's going to come after him now. And I used to worry about that all the time with Scott, but I just feel like he just really likes Waco and where he is. When you talk to him just about the town and the school, what do you think it is that he likes so much about what he's got there?
Well, he loves Baylor University, one, because of the foundation of a Christian background and a Christian faith, and he's able to work that into his basketball teaching, which really probably is the most thing I admire about him, is his faith and the strength his faith has to help him with the team. The other things with help me. What was the question again?
Just the town and the environment.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm getting that way too. Just the environment in the town and just the whole atmosphere there. The fit.
The faith is the foundation, is the first thing, and then from there you have to look to the administration. And he's had some wonderful athletic directors, and Mac Rhodes is there now, and he is a great support system and really helps and works with Scott on what to do, what do we need to do. And then you've got a president who played basketball at Oklahoma State, Janet Livingston, and she's an avid fan, knows the game of basketball. And so he's got quality people around him to work with. And then you throw in the players that they were able to attract because of Baylor and its philosophy. It's really, Jason, a wonderful fit. And so from a father looking in, I've been, just thrilled and have thank you prayers all the time for the blessing of letting Scott be there.
Right now, when you go to town to see him, do you have any places y'all like to go, or rituals or routines, or post game or anything?
Well, sure. If he's winning well, we'll get him up early and go fishing for an hour or so. Nice. He's got a lot of nice spots there. And of course, Lake Waco has the basketball tournaments. They've got fishing tournaments right there at Lake Waco. But Rudy's is one of our favorites that we love to take in as well. And then there's 3 or 4. There's a lot of nice eating places. And of course, Dr. Pepper. We always got to drink a Dr. Pepper down in the land of Waco and the land of Dr. Pepper.
Absolutely. Last thing for me is, I believe if I have the stats right, Wednesday's game against Oklahoma is big because both of you are at 351 career wins. I don't know if you knew that David Kay, the sports information director, told me that. So he's about to surpass you, I guess, in career victories. I know he's a big competitive guy. Does he ever bring that up or give you a hard time?
No, we haven't. But David Kay is wonderful. He keeps up to date on stats. So we did know and thrilled and hope that is accomplished on Wednesday. Because as you and I know, Oklahoma has Lon Kruger is an outstanding coach, and they're off a good win, so it's going to be a hard game even at home. So, but I hope he gets it and moves on from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess my final question, Homer, is we have a new arena coming down in Baylor, and I know you've seen Grand Canyon with Bryce is the coach there, and they've got a terrific home court atmosphere. Now everything's messed up because of COVID, obviously, but in a normal year, how important do you think that new arena is going to be for, Scott, and just, having that unique home court advantage that only a few programs across the country have?
It's outstanding to have that. That sixth man is truly the sixth man. The energy that the crowd really helps, especially in tight games. It gives you that little extra bounce, the edge that you need when you know that the fans are there and watching the team perform and you perform. So that home court is a big advantage. The new arena is going to be well received by the students. It's going to be well received by the coaches, and especially for recruiting with all the amenities that they're talking about putting in. That will really help and leveling the field for recruiting with some of the others who have gotten new arenas as well. So I think this will be a really good addition for basketball, but also for the fans who come and see. And as you know, with the picture behind you, it's a beautiful campus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to do this. You've been listening to a podcast with Ashley Hodge and Jason King for the SicEm365 podcast network. Also, Phil to 68 with Jeff Goodman and Rob Doster. SicEm Bears.
SicEm.
Bears. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.